Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we continue our coverage of the Oscar-nominated movies from 2018. Last time we were talking about the Best Picture nominations extensively, mostly focusing on why Black Panther was even nominated. But today I want to hop over to a lesser-known 2018 movie from Disney called Mary Poppins Returns. This long-awaited sequel to the 1964 classic came out last Christmas, a few months ago, and I have to say, I saw it myself with the wife and we were pleasantly surprised at how good it was. It's a kids' family film, of course, and a musical too, but if that's your sort of thing, it's definitely worth a watch. Good stuff. Not to mention Emily Blunt as Mary Poppins was really fun to see. It's no wonder this movie not only did decently well at the box office, but also it's been nominated for a number of respectable Academy Awards. Mary Poppins Returns has been nominated for Best Production Design, Original Score, Original Song, and Costume Design. 4 nominations. Not too shabby. And I wouldn't be surprised if they win 1 or 2 of those either. But with all this attention coming back around to the franchise and new eyes coming upon it too, well, Mary Poppins hasn't seen a completely positive and supportive return to the public eye. You see, with this new movie and all this Oscar attention it's receiving, well, this has prompted some journalists and SJWs to review the original movie, and you'll never believe what they're getting offended about now. Apparently some liberals are looking back at a certain scene from the 1964 film, which had the characters getting dirty and having some black dust from the chimneys get on their faces. And well, if you can see where this is going, then yeah, you guessed it. The social justice warriors are saying Mary Poppins had blackface in the original movie, ignoring the fact that it was just dirt on their faces used in the scene for dramatic effect. Well, leave it to the politically correct left-wingers to ruin everything that's fun, I guess. They're even time-traveling back to 50-year-old movies now, just to try and ruin our childhoods retroactively too, I suppose. What a goddamn joke. For more information on this story, let's turn to the original op-ed article that started this whole controversy, saying Mary Poppins is racist now. It comes from the failing New York Times, and it's called Mary Poppins and a Nanny's Shameful Flirting with Blackface. Check this bullshit out. Mary Poppins Returns, which picked up 4 Oscar nominations last week, is an enjoyably derivative film that seeks to inspire our nostalgia for the innocent fantasies of childhood, as well as the jolly holidays that the first Mary Poppins film conjured for many adult viewers. Part of the new film's nostalgia, however, is bound up in a blackface performance tradition that persists throughout Mary Poppins canon, from P.L. Travers' books to Disney's 1964 adaptation, with disturbing echoes in the studio's newest take on the material, Mary Poppins Returns. One of the more indelible images from the 1964 film is of Mary Poppins blacking up when the magical nanny, played by Julie Andrews, accompanies her young charges, Michael and Jane Banks, up their chimney. Her face gets covered in soot, but instead of wiping it off, she gamely powders her nose and cheeks even blacker. Then she leads the children on a dancing exploration of London rooftops with Dick Van Dyke's sooty chimney sweep, Bert. Yeah, Mary Poppins did that for fun. The whole point of her story is Mary is a strict, firm caregiver for the children, sometimes, but she also encourages them to sing and dance and play as well, enjoying their lives equally as much as they study and learn to grow up and stuff like that. The scene with the chimney soot is just an easy way for the original movie to have this sort of let's play in the dirt kind of fun scene. This is a common thing kids of all ages do too, in the past and up until the present as well. Some other examples would be kids playing in the mud on a rainy day, or having a food fight at a school cafeteria, or even at home. Sometimes when you're a kid, it's fun to get all dirty, and sometimes you get as dirty as possible, because then it feels even better when you have to go home and clean up. And the cleanup part can be fun too. You can hose yourself off outside or even jump into a pool. Regardless, I think you get my point. So when Mary Poppins blacked her face up, as this New York Times writer says, she clearly wasn't doing it to be racially insensitive or offensive. She was just having fun with the kids, getting dirty for a bit before they go home and clean things up. This should be considered good old-fashioned fun too, but clearly this New York Times writer has a stick up their ass. That, and they're trying to make this racy and offensive when it's really not. Sounds like they have a bone to pick with Disney. The 1964 film replays this racial panic in a farcical key when the dark figures of the chimney sweeps step in time on a roof. A naval buffoon, Admiral Boom, shouts, "We're being attacked by Hottentots," and orders his cannon to be fired at the cheeky devils. We're in on the joke, such as it is. These aren't really black Africans. They're grinning white dancers in blackface. It's a parody of a black menace. It's even posted on a white nationalist website as evidence of the film's racial hierarchy. And it's not only fools like the Admiral who invoke this language. In the 1952 novel Mary Poppins in the Park, the nanny herself tells an upset young Michael, "I understand that you're behaving like a Hottentot." Mary Poppins Returns, set in the 1930s, seems to offer a more racially inclusive vision of the Banks' London, at least among the working classes. But a key sequence of the film plays into a much more fraught history from a suppressed part of Mary Poppins' past. Wow, calm down, buddy. There's not a big secret racist past Mary Poppins has to atone for. Chill. All you did was find a term that's a little more racially insensitive now. now, in current year. But at the time, calling Africans Hottentots was completely common and not offensive. Just because you did a Google search that says some people somewhere were offended by this term now in 2019 doesn't mean it was being used in an offensive or racist way back in the 1960s. Jesus, dude, get a life. Literally no one who watched the original Mary Poppins movie even noticed this term was used at all. I don't remember it. Sounds like something funny and old school most kids wouldn't even think twice about, especially coming from the Admiral. Let's not forget, that character is an old buffoon, as he's mentioned here, and he always says crazy funny stuff all the time. Quit trying to retroactively make this line in that movie racist. They're not. And I don't care or have time to address all the references to supposedly offensive lines from the books, which again were written over 50 years ago. I think this New York Times guy is trying to sprinkle in some of the book references to try and shore up his case against the movies. But to me, it just looks like he's desperate to paint this franchise as racist and offensive for really no good reason. So with that said, I want to focus on the movie criticisms in this article now, since I've only seen the movies and they're the only reason this character is still popular and being talked about. If you want to see any more of this article like the book references and read the whole thing for yourself, well, check out a link I left for it below this video. But for now, I'm going to move on. These chimney sweeps with minstrel dances were only a step in time away from Dick Van Dyke's soot-faced Bert, needling the Admiral on the roof, or Miranda's lamplighter in Mary Poppins Returns, who worked for Bert as a child. The minstrel stage convention of the Pickaninny rendered black slave children as cheery performers who, the historian Robin Bernstein argues, were comically impervious to pain inflicted by their labor. Similarly, the dark-lit grins and unflappable footwork of the lamplighters turn their dangerous labor into comic play. Smile and smirk, they sing, is Cockney rhyming slang for work. That minstrel history runs not only through Travers' books, it's also a mainstay of Disney musicals, including the jiving blackbird credited as Jim Crow in the 1941 Dumbo, and then there's some undeniably offensive lines from Dumbo. It was a different time back then. Moving on. Blackface minstrelsy, in fact, could be said to be part of Disney's origin story. In an early Mickey Mouse short, a 1933 parody of the anti-slavery novel Uncle Tom's Cabin called Mickey's Melodramer, Mickey blacks his face with dynamite to play Topsy, a crazy-haired, raggedy-dressed, comically unruly black child from the book, whose name had become synonymous with the Pickaninny stereotype. Okay, now it looks like we're comparing this all to minstrel shows. And while I might just move past that here, it's pretty clear this writer is taking an SJW approach though. They want to pin blackface and minstrel shows on Mary Poppins, so they can say it's minstrel inspired and therefore racist, which means they can call it racist now to this day. But I really don't think that logic is very sound at all. We already went over why it wasn't really blackface, but for the sake of argument here, let's say it was. Let's even say Mary Poppins and these other older Disney properties were inspired by minstrel shows back in the day that used blackface. Well, I say, so what? Is it really a crime to be inspired by a legitimate form of entertainment from the time? Not to defend minstrel shows now or anything, but in the 1800s and even up to 1910, minstrel shows were still around. Hell, minstrel shows even had appearances on TV as late as 1975, over 10 years after the release of the first Mary Poppins movie. Sure, they are considered highly offensive and racist now, but can we really hold the past up to the present's politically correct standards? I don't think so. And I think understanding the nuances and the differences in times here is far more interesting, but it really seems like the New York Times and this article, they just want to call Mary Poppins and Disney racist, and then call it a day and go home and take their wives out to dinner. And while I don't deny there are some racy, borderline things that happen here in the past, I also won't condemn the company and the movies in the present for supposed past racist offenses. In Mary Poppins Returns, the name of the crazy-haired, raggedy-dressed, comically unruly character, played by Meryl Streep, is also Topsy. She's a variation on Mr. Turvey in the novel Mary Poppins Comes Back, whose workshop flips upside down. Even if these characters' shared name is accidental, it speaks to a larger point. Disney has long evoked minstrelsy for its topsy-turvy entertainments. A nanny blacking up, chimney sweeps mocking the upper classes, grinning lamplighters turning work into song. In this latest version, Mary Poppins might be serenading Disney genres, outdated but strangely recurring in the Oscar-nominated song The Place Where Lost Things Go, when she reminds us that nothing's gone forever, only out of place. Well, I think you're reaching quite a bit here, New York Times. You're seeing blackface when it isn't really there, and you're making these long and loose connections to minstrel shows, which really aren't as offensive as you assume. Did you notice how this writer doesn't even try to explain why minstrel shows are racist or bad? No talk about the blackface actors putting on offensive characters in these comedy shows. And this is also something which is okay to do in the reverse now, by the way. Black comedians can do movies in whiteface all they want, with no repercussions, but if a white actor accidentally gets their face too dirty on camera, well, the SJWs want to draw and quarter him in public for supposed racism and blackface. Shit, I just talked about a Best Picture nominated movie yesterday, which had its whole premise based on a black cop doing a fake white voice, kind of like whiteface or blackface. In fact, two movies movies came out with white voice last year, but I never heard one complaint about that being racist or offensive. Not that I think it is either, but if this Mary Poppins scene is offensive, then this whole white voice thing is way worse, if we're using basic logic and reason here. But for some reason, SJWs aren't smart enough to think like that, so that's why they always come up with bullshit like this New York Times op-ed article. What do you guys think? Is Mary Poppins racist or offensive? Was that scene with the dirt on their faces supposed to be blackface? And is blackface even offensive if it was? How come whiteface is okay but black isn't? Comment your thoughts and everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.